When we created East Coast Believers Church, this is a church that we started from scratch some years ago. And when we did it, we knew we wanted to be a church where you wouldn't just come and hear a message, where you wouldn't just come and sing a few songs. We wanted it to be a church where you would come and experience Him. We wanted it to be a church where you have a sense that He is here, like not just talk about Him and not just sing about Him, but actually really experience Him. Because what I know is, if you could just experience Him, it would change everything in your life. And I know that, our home is, we kind of base our home on that. Dean and I, we have 5 kids. And our home is, honestly, it's pretty chaotic, to be truthful. It's far from perfect. And even today was one of those mornings, everyone's trying to figure out what to wear and all that, and a lot of chaos in there, but kids coming and going, their friends coming and going. And when I was a kid, we had to ask to eat out of the fridge because I had 7 kids. My kids don't do that at all. They don't even have their friends ask. In fact, they just invite them over. They don't even order pizza on Uber on me. And But we wanted to intentionally create a home where they felt good. They felt the peace. They felt presence. In fact, our home even got more chaotic because, we have older ones that are in college and then little ones in elementary and middle school and all that. And then this year, a couple of days ago for Christmas, we have a new member of our family, and it even got more chaotic. And 6-1 vote. I was the one. And but in the chaos, in our home, what I want our family to feel is peace. I want them to feel good about being home. I want them to enjoy being around. And I guess, honestly, it's what I want for you tonight for this service. What I want for you is this, if just for a second, if you could feel God. It's been that kind of a year. I don't even really have a message prepared. In fact, when I got with our team, we said, hey, let's just create a service where people could experience God. And because what I know is this, when God shows up, it changes everything. Because I know 2020's been that year where we need God to show up. And interesting enough, I'm trying to prepare what I was gonna do tonight. I've been all week long kind of messing around, really for a month, messing around with this. And finally, I just quit writing and just came in here all week long and prayed that God would come. In fact, I asked our staff, I said, come and join with me. Let's just pray that people would experience God. When you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's 4 Gospels. All 4 tell the same story from really different perspectives. Interesting enough about the Christmas story, that Matthew and Luke, they pick up the life of Jesus when he was a baby, and they give details of his birth. And in John's Gospel and Mark's Gospel, they don't give those details. They actually pick up his life when he became an adult. And so actually, Luke and Matthew, they give details, but John's Gospel in particular, it gives the significance of his life. And I found it interesting in John chapter 1 and verse 4, when Jesus showed up, it said in verse 4, and his life, the life of Jesus, it brought light to everyone. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Or what I thought is 2020 needs this verse. He came because we have issues in our life. He came because we have challenges. What I know in a room with this many people in it, there are people who have struggles in their life. There are people who the year isn't what you thought it was going to be, and we have challenges, whether they are relational, whether they are physical, medical, whether they are financial, whether they are spiritual, whatever they are. I know these many people have issues in here. And Jesus came to bring light to those issues. One of my favorite stories is found actually in the Gospel of John. And it's not a Christmas story, but it's a story that if you go to our church, you hear me preach on it often because it speaks to me. In John chapter 8 and verse 1, it talks about this woman who was caught in the act of adultery. And probably you know that story where, remember, she was caught in the act of adultery, and remember the Pharisees brought her to Jesus, and they said, Jesus, what do we do with her? Remember he wrote something in the sand, and he said to them, hey, the first one among you who's never committed a sin, you can cast the first stone. And remember how he looked at the woman and he said, where are your condemners? And she said, none, Lord. He said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Well, that's in John chapter 8, verse 11. And I love that story, but as I was reading this year, that all of a sudden, I don't know why I've never connected it, but verse 12, which is the next verse, it says this: Jesus spoke to the people once more, and he said, so the same crowd still there. And I never saw this before. And he said, I am the light of the world. Like if you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. In other words, what I did for her, I can do for you. If you need a fresh start, I can give you a fresh start. And I just thought, I wonder if anybody in here today would want a fresh start. Jesus said, I can be that light to you. Like if you would truly follow me. And that's why I said, I don't need to preach a message. We just need to encounter Jesus today. And I kind of know where I got this thought. In our before we were in this building, we were in another building. We only had 2 buildings, and it was a much smaller building, okay? We sat about a fourth of the people. We could seat about 1,000 here. We sat about 250 in there. And so this one Christmas, somehow Christmas fell. It was like on a Saturday or Sunday, I forget. But we were doing multiple services. I think we did like 6 services over a Saturday and a Sunday. And it was the last service. It was late at night. Like we did like a 7 p.m. service or something. And I'd been there all day long. And I was really tired and kind of just greeting people, and they were leaving. And I noticed in the corner, we had a real small lobby. Like it was so small, probably 20 by 12 or something, I forget. And so I was just saying bye to people, and I saw this young man sitting over here in the corner, and he was looking at me, kind of staring at me, and I could tell he was from the Middle East. Got traveled all over. I could tell he's from the Middle East, and finally I kind of connected with him, and I said, hey, everything okay? And he goes, yes, everything's okay. He goes, I found it. I figured it out. I said, what did you find? What did you figure out? He had been invited by our banker. He was a barista at Starbucks. And he was a Muslim. He said, when we were singing Joy to the World, I figured it out. Jesus is the Son of God. And tonight I made him my God. And here's what I'm trying to tell you. He had this experience. He had this moment where he encountered God. And that's what I hope tonight we could have. Just one moment. If just for 1 second you could feel God. I know in our home, again, pretty busy schedules, you know, and probably it's from being pastor and me traveling and stuff and helping other churches, and Dean is busy. And anyways, so one of the things that we really hone in on that's really important to us is special events in the kids' lives, be it birthdays or sporting events and or vacations. And if you know me pretty well, you know those are pretty important events. Like Christmas is a big deal for us. We make it tonight's, like we're gonna celebrate Christmas at our house tonight, Christmas Eve. It's sort of a tradition, the way we do things, and the kids pick out the food, we open gifts and all that sort of thing. And one of them said to me today, you remember the tradition we started last year, opening gifts the morning before services? I said, that was not a tradition. That was just a fluke. He tried to pull that out on me. That's a tradition. And the reason is I try to do that is because what I know is this: there are a lot of competing voices in my kid's life. And the voice that I want to be the loudest in their life is my voice. I don't want their friend's voice to be the loudest. I don't want their teacher's voice. I appreciate all the people that serve them and do that, but I want my voice to be the loudest in their life. And I got to compete to be the loudest voice in their life. Here's the reason why I want my voice to be the loudest: because I care about them the most. I love them the most. I think about them the most. I promise you, they're more on my mind than anybody else. That's why my voice has to be the most significant or the loudest in their life. And I think tonight, a lot of us, that's where God is. And I pray that you experience him. I pray that you have an experience with him where you get to know him, where his voice becomes the loudest in your life. You know why? Because I promise you this: he loves you more than I do. Because I love you, and I promise you, I really do. I think about you a lot, like all week long. I haven't really worked this week other than pray for you. I got work to do, but I just been in this sanctuary praying for this moment all week long. But I don't love you enough to give up one of my kids for you. All right? He cares about you more than anyone else. He thinks about you. You're on his mind more than anyone else. And here's what I know. The reason I think a special moment in a service like this is important, because in special moments come special messages that God could speak. Now, I don't know what you think about that. I don't know how you view this. And maybe you think I'm crazy, but like I don't really think I know God speaks, because he speaks to me and he speaks to you. And I know that there could be a moment, like if you go back to the Old Testament, there's the story back there remember of Moses with the burning bush? That was a pretty special moment. A bush is burning because there was a special message to give. Well, if you go back to the Christmas story, it was a special moment because God had a special message to deliver, and it's found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, and in verse 8. And this is the story they wrote about Silent Night. And the truth is there was nothing silent about Silent Night, okay? That's a cute little song, but Silent Night, there was Roman oppression going on. Mary, who was 9 months pregnant, was on a donkey traveling, okay? She's staying in a manger, in a barn with animals. Come on, I haven't given birth much, but I've been around it a lot. And there's nothing silent about your wife giving birth, I can promise. And this is pre-epidural days and all that sort of thing. And so there was nothing silent about that night. And in fact, here's the story. It's found in Luke chapter 2 and in verse 8. It says, now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields. What's unique about the shepherds is they were outcast. The shepherds weren't like the in crowd. The shepherds lived by themselves. In fact, under Jewish law, they were ceremonial unclean, and so people didn't even hang out with them. And it says, and for some reason, God chose to deliver the message about Jesus to the shepherds. And it said, and they were keeping watch over their flock by night, and behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them. And this angel came and delivered this message. And notice this, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were greatly afraid. And it was more than just an angel, it was the glory of God. And the glory of God, it means the presence of God. It means it was an experience they had. It wasn't just a message. They encountered a living God. And actually that word glory means all of God. It means the fullness of God. It means the full weight of God. It means, in other words, God showed up and he delivered a message. And it means, and you might not be able to see him. You might not even be able to even feel him necessarily. But I promise you, he wants to come here. He wants to visit you. I'll explain it to you like this. If you have kids, and this literally happened to us this week. But it's happened more than once. But if you can be sound asleep, and at our house, we're on one side and all the kids are on the other side. And so if you have little kids and they wake up in the middle of the night, if they come in your room, you could be zonked out, sound asleep, and they can walk right in. And you know this to be true. They want to talk to you. They'll get this far from your face. They don't bother tapping you on the shoulder or saying, hello, I'm here. They just walk in real stealth mode. And they just get this far from your face. And you're laying down, and if you're sleeping, you feel something. You know there's something there. You're trying to make up your mind. Do you open your eyes or not? And finally, you just open your eyes, and there they are, their nose to your nose like that. I'm scared. I'm hungry. And this week, I was asleep. I heard Dina say, "Mine, you scared me." And that's really what God showed up here. And then in verse 11, it says, "For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger." And God showed up. And I prayed, honestly, that you would have a God moment like this. A moment where you could actually say, I felt God tonight. And he delivered this message to them. He just said 3 things to them. He said, do not be afraid. I have some good news for you. And the Savior has come. In other words, I'm going to throw a lifeline out to you. And the shepherds, if you read this story, they responded to this. And here's my advice to you. When God shows up, you have 1 or 2 choices. You can respond and receive that, or you can sort of push him away. And Here's the reality, and I just want to shoot straight with you. If you push God away, he's a perfect gentleman. He'll honor that. My advice to you would be not to push God away, but just open your heart, because he wants to bring you some hope. I think maybe 2020 has been that year, like it's been the silent year for you. But I think sometimes in the silence, God speaks. I think in a moment where you could be like, where's God? I think if you listen, you'd hear these words, I love you. I think you'd hear these words, I am for you. I think you'd hear these words, I care about you. I think you'd hear these words that I have a hope and a future for you. I think in moments what we consider silence is when God wants to speak, because our lives really are chaotic. Interesting enough, we're in most our Christmas Eve services with candlelight. And probably, honestly, we do this because when I was a kid growing up, we did communion and candlelight services. And I like all that. And that's why, I guess, why we're doing it. And we end it with the song Silent Night. And one of my favorite Christmas songs that we sing. If you read the history of the song Silent Night, it was written in 1818 by two men. One was Father Joseph Moore. And here's the story behind it. It was written in Salzburg, Austria. He was the pastor of the church, of all churches, St. Nicholas Church it was called. I think that's funny. And what happened was on December 23rd, Christmas Eve, the organ broke for the church, which is really a pretty big deal back then, because back then the kind of music that they would do would be big. I mean, it'd be real loud numbers. And they would do these huge numbers where they would require like a lot of instruments, like, "Oh, come all ye faithful." You can't do "Oh, come all ye faithful" with a little acoustic guitar. So the organ broke, and it was a big crisis moment in the church, and they didn't know what to do. So they had this unemployed organist and this pastor, and they got together on Christmas Eve, and they said, "God, what do we do?" And in that middle of that crisis, God spoke a song to them, which we now sing, Silent Night, Holy Night. In the silence and in the crisis where it looked bad, God showed up. And I would venture to say today, some 200 years later, and this is just a guess, all across the world tonight, I don't want to exaggerate, I don't want to be super dramatic with this, but I'm guessing that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of churches around the world are singing Silent Night, Holy Night. And I need you to know that was birthed out of a moment where it looked like, where was God? And God showed up. And here we are 200 years later. And those words are still impacting people's lives today. And my hope is that you would today have just one experience with God, one encounter where you say, I know he's real.